Welcome, everyone. My name is Marta De Santis, and I am a Regulatory Affairs Specialist at the Division of Therapeutics and Medical Consequences, or DTMC, at the National Institute on Drug Abuse, at the National Institute of Health. Let me introduce you to the division first. The Medications Development Program of DTMC was created by congressional mandate in 1990 to establish a program to develop medications for the treatment of heroin and cocaine dependence. Since then, we have also included developing medications to treat nicotine, cannabis, methamphetamine, and prescription opioid dependence. We support a program of basic and clinical research to develop innovative pharmacological and non-pharmacological approaches for substance use disorders and related medical and psychiatric conditions, and to investigate the medical consequences of drug abuse, such as HIV/AIDS and hepatitis, among other diseases. DTMC funds research through grants, cooperative agreements, and contracts. We collaborate with investigators from academia, the pharmaceutical and biotechnology sectors, and national and international government agencies as well. Our division is modeled after a typical pharmaceutical company. DTMC has the capabilities to conduct all phases of medications development, from screening and synthesis of potential drug entities to pharmacological and toxicological preclinical studies, the conduct of clinical trials, and the preparation of submissions for new drug applications. When it comes to pharmacotherapies for opioid use disorder, or OUD, many people with OUD benefit from treatment with medication for varying lengths of time, including lifelong treatment. We know that ongoing outpatient medication treatment is linked to better retention and outcomes than treatment without medication. So FDA-approved medications should be considered and offered to patients with OUD as part of their treatment. There are 3 medications approved by FDA for the treatment of opioid dependence: methadone, buprenorphine, and LAM. Methadone, a mu opioid receptor full agonist, eliminates withdrawal symptoms and relieves drug cravings by acting on opioid receptors in the brain. Although it occupies and activates these receptors, it does so more slowly than other opioids do, and in an opioid-dependent person, it does not produce euphoria. It comes in 2 oral formulations for the treatment of OUD. These are a daily tablet and a daily oral concentrate. Buprenorphine is a partial agonist of the mu opioid receptor. It can only partially activate the receptor, but binds extremely tightly to it, and thus prevents other opioids from accessing it. It can reduce cravings and withdrawal symptoms in a person with OUD without producing euphoria, like methadone does. For buprenorphine, there are 2 types of products on the market: the ones containing solely buprenorphine and the combination with naloxone. Naloxone is an opioid receptor antagonist that is added to decrease the likelihood of diversion and misuse of the combination drug product. For buprenorphine alone, the formulations are a 6-month implant, a 1-month injection depot, and a sublingual formulation of daily buprenorphine. For buprenorphine and naloxone products, there are buccal and sublingual daily dose formulations. LAM, or levomethadyl acetate, is an opioid receptor agonist that has been discontinued by the manufacturer and is currently not commercially available. LAM is a synthetic opioid structurally related to methadone with properties that are allowed for thrice-weekly dosing due to its active metabolites. LAM labeling changed in 2001 to reflect newly identified safety concerns with QT interval prolongation, but FDA never requested a market withdrawal. Last, we have naltrexone, an opioid receptor antagonist that works by blocking the effect of opioid receptors and decreasing cravings. Naltrexone is also approved for the prevention of relapse to opioid dependence after detoxification. It is currently marketed as an extended-release injectable suspension administered every 4 weeks or once a month. This slide shows the market share of each of these medications globally. As you can see, the buprenorphine segment accounted for the largest share of the market in 2020 due to the greater adoption of buprenorphine products, mainly in the US. When it comes to the treatment of withdrawal symptoms, lofexidine is the only FDA-approved compound. Lofexidine is an alpha-2 adrenergic agonist that does not interact directly with the opioid receptor. For the treatment of opioid overdose, we have available a small variety of naloxone formulations. Naloxone is an opioid receptor antagonist, and it's used to reverse opioid overdose by attaching to opioid receptors and blocking the effects of other opioids. It comes as nasal sprays in 2 different doses and injectables with different dosages, including the recently approved high dose of 5 milligrams. Finally, there is nalmefene, a mu-opioid receptor inverse agonist with a longer action than naloxone or naltrexone. It is approved by FDA but not currently on the market. Despite the existence of safe and effective therapeutics of OUD, including the treatment of opioid overdose, there are still limitations to these pharmacotherapies that need to be addressed in order to combat effectively the ongoing overdose crisis. For the current formulations of methadone and buprenorphine, long-term efficacy and treatment adherence are suboptimal. Moreover, these medications are agonists of the opioid receptor, so they have abuse liability and therefore are controlled substances. Naltrexone is approved to prevent opioid use relapse in people with no physical dependence to opioids, but initiation and adherence to treatment are poor. Naloxone is approved to reverse opioid overdose, but it has a short action, may precipitate opioid withdrawal, and put the person at risk of overdose, especially when fentanyl or fentanyl analogs are involved. FDA-approved versions of naloxone currently require a prescription, which may be a barrier for people who aren't under the care of a physician or may be ashamed of admitting to issues with substance abuse. And finally, lofexidine is only approved for adults. It is not approved to treat pregnant women nor neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome. In an effort to leverage science to help address these problems and to produce more acceptable and effective medications, DTMC established a pipeline for projects related to the development of pharmacotherapeutics for the treatment of OUD and opioid overdose. You can see in this slide DTMC's current medication pipeline, summarizing all efforts that have been pursued so far. It is very exciting to see that the pipeline consists of 55 projects at present, 13 of them involving the development of new formulations of already approved opiates for OUD or opioid overdose, 12 novel compounds in the early preclinical stage, 13 compounds in the late preclinical stage, and 17 in the clinical phase. I'll start describing the projects corresponding to the new formulations category. In this category, we are supporting the development of longer-acting formulations of opioids to improve compliance and prevent relapse. We are very happy to have in our pipeline several longer-acting naltrexone formulations for the treatment of OUD. As I said before, naltrexone is only available as a monthly injection depot, and longer-acting formulations are desirable to improve its effectiveness. We have 5 formulations with potential dosing strategies ranging from 2 months to 1 year. Other candidates for longer-acting formulations include weekly oral formulations for buprenorphine and armethadone. This would be an improvement to the daily dosage of available current formulations for these 2 drugs. Nalmefene has a longer duration of action when compared to other opioids, and implants lasting 6 or even 2 to 3 months may effectively prevent craving and relapse. Finally, the reintroduction of LAM may provide a valuable choice due to its proven behavioral and clinical advantages. With respect to new formulations for the treatment of opioid overdose, Opiant Pharmaceuticals is developing a nalmefene intranasal formulation. The objective is to provide a longer-acting blocking effect than naloxone and prevent respiratory depression more effectively than naloxone. Other exciting projects involve the development of an implantable naloxone delivery system and a novel intranasal delivery method for naloxone intended to be affordable and used in over-the-counter settings. Now let's switch our focus to potential new pharmacotherapies. Due to time constraints, I won't be fully describing the mechanism of actions of all these drug candidates, but I would like to emphasize that our portfolio includes novel pharmacotherapies with pharmacological mechanisms not acting through the new opioid receptor that could lead to the approval of medications without abuse liability. These targets include the orexin receptor, the kappa opioid receptor, the GABA B receptor, glutamate AMPA receptor, and the nociception opioid peptide receptors, just to name a few. Now let's start with the early preclinical category. All the projects in this category are only focusing on lead compound optimization, pharmacology, and some toxicology. All of these compounds are being developed for the treatment of OUD, except for the carfentanil humanized monoclonal antibody with an indication for the treatment of acute exposure to carfentanil. All candidates are novel compounds. That means that they have not been tested in humans before and will be considered new molecular entities or NMEs by the FDA. We have 12 candidates. 2 of them are being developed to target the mu opioid receptor, a mu delta opioid receptor antagonist, and a mu opioid receptor modulator. 6 candidates are targeting new pharmacological mechanisms, including the aforementioned nociception receptor, kappa opioid receptor, and orexin receptor, but also a beta-arrestin biased allosteric modulator of the neurotensin receptor 1, a receptor type protein tyrosine phosphatase D inhibitor or PTPRD inhibitor, a GPR151 antagonist, and a gene therapy based on the expression of the glial cell line-derived neurotrophic factor, or GDNF, in the brain. We also are supporting the development of 4 biologics, including vaccines against fentanyl. The late preclinical phase relates to compounds with undergoing pharmacology and toxicology studies that are meant to support the filing of investigational new drug applications with FDA for testing in humans. For late preclinical candidates, we have a total of 13 projects, with 5 of them involving the development of compounds targeting the mu opioid receptor, such as armethadone and nalmefene prodrugs, a new opioid peptide partial agonist, mitragynine, and methoxynamox. There are 6 candidates targeting new pharmacological mechanisms, including another nociceptive receptor antagonist, a ghrelin system antagonist, an NMDA receptor modulator, a dopamine D2/3 receptor partial agonist, and a glutamate AMPA receptor antagonist. In addition, we have two biologics, one heroin vaccine and a fully human monoclonal antibody against fentanyl that is being developed for the prevention of fentanyl overdose. Of note, brexpiprazole is currently commercially available and is produced by Otsuka Pharmaceuticals. This dopamine D2 receptor partial agonist is under development as an adjunctive treatment to buprenorphine maintenance therapy. We also have Tissum Panel, the glutamate AMPA receptor antagonist, a compound already tested in humans that is currently being developed to treat withdrawal symptoms. Moving on to candidates in the clinical phase, I'm going to start by describing the projects with planned or ongoing phase 1 studies first. We have 14 projects under this subcategory with only one compound targeting the mu opioid receptor, and that is ITI-333. It is a mu opioid peptide agonist that is being developed by Intracellular Therapies. We are very excited to have 12 candidates in clinical stages targeting new pharmacological mechanisms, including the GABA-B receptor, orexin receptors, dopamine D2/3 receptors, and the kappa opioid receptor. There is a total of 7 candidates that are new molecular entities that had never been tested in humans before, including ASP8062, a GABA-B modulator by Astellas Pharma, INDB2000, and AZD4041, both orexin receptor antagonists by Indivior and AstraZeneca respectively. 2 compounds by Cerebral Therapeutics, CBL936, and dopamine D2/3 receptor antagonist, and CBL354, a kappa opioid receptor antagonist, and an oxycodone vaccine. With regard to already approved drugs, we have 2 projects using cannabidiol to treat OUD. We have lemborexant, a dual orexin receptor antagonist that is being studied as an adjunctive treatment for buprenorphine and naloxone therapy. We also have suvorexant, another dual orexin receptor antagonist that is being tested to increase total sleep time during withdrawal. And liraglutide, a glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist that is being studied as a treatment for OUD. Ketamine, an NMDA receptor antagonist, is being tested to improve outcomes of individuals engaged in a rapid non-opioid-based oral naltrexone titration, followed by extended-release naltrexone maintenance. In addition, there is one project testing lofexidine in neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome. With respect to phase 2 studies, DTMC is currently supporting the conduct of 3 studies. The first, using cannabidiol to test the reduction of opioid use and to decrease pain in patients with chronic non-cancer pain syndrome. The second, testing the combination of pregabalin with lofexidine for the treatment of withdrawal symptoms and to facilitate the transition to extended-release naltrexone. And the last one is the study of guanfacine, an alpha-2 adrenergic agonist, to improve substance use outcome in women. All these compounds are commercially available. To summarize, DTMC currently supports 55 projects for the development of pharmaceuticals intended to treat OUD, opioid overdose, and withdrawal symptoms, including candidates that do not target the mu opioid receptor and therefore could lead to medications without abuse liability. The pipeline shows a diverse portfolio consistent of new formulations of already approved opiates for OUD and overdose, new molecular entities including small molecules and biologics, and approved drugs for other indications. There are multiple projects involving new longer-acting formulations of naltrexone, buprenorphine, and methadone, and projects to reintroduce nalmefene and LAM-2. There is also a novel naloxone formulation with the potential to become the first OTC naloxone product if approved. The pipeline also shows several projects in early preclinical, late preclinical, and clinical stages involving non-mu opioid receptor targets such as the orexin receptor, kappa opioid receptor, the kappa B receptor, the AMPA receptors, nociception opioid peptide receptors, the ghrelin system, and dopamine D2/3 receptor. Finally, we support several projects in early and late clinical stages involving biologics targeting oxycodone, heroin, and fentanyl. For additional information about all the projects described in this presentation, please go to the NIH reporter website and search for the grant number linked to each project in the pipeline. Lastly, I would like to spread the word about these 3 funding opportunities for anyone interested in collaborating with us to develop medications for the treatment and prevention of OUD and opioid overdose. This concludes my presentation, and thank you for your attention.